Mr. Chairman, members of this Food and Agriculture Policy Advisory Committee. First, I want to thank you all for giving me the time to speak to you all on a pressing issue going on in Arizona. My name is Gabriel Pena, and today I am here to discuss the ongoing issue of food deserts and food insecurity that have plagued our great state for years. Unfortunately, even after all these years of progress that we have made in this great state, the issue of food security and food deserts has seemed to slip between the cracks, and in doing so, has not only cost the state billions in healthcare costs in relation to access, and because of the health issues related to these food deserts. Mr. Chairman, fellow members, over the next 10 minutes, I will describe what exactly is a food desert and what food security means, then highlight the dramatic health issues that come from these food deserts, the potential financial burden on the state if we don't deal with the issue, and finally, some solutions that my team feels could help deal with this crisis. Now, in order to properly discuss food deserts in relation to Arizona, we must have a basic running definition to use for the sake of my testimony. Now, the USDA has defined food deserts as urban neighborhoods or rural towns without ready access to fresh, healthy, and affordable food. And my team has further expanded this definition by including with it that in urban deserts, people often travel further than a mile for a grocery store, and over 10 miles if they're in a rural food desert. And one criteria for food deserts here in the United States is that the poverty rate must be greater than or equal to 20% in these communities. These food deserts primarily affect low-income members as well as minority members of our community here in Arizona, with our rural areas as well as the Phoenix Mesa urban area being hit dramatically by these deserts. Now, if we talk about food deserts, we must also talk about the issue of food security, especially here in our state. The USDA defines food insecurity as not having consistent access to adequate food because of the lack of money or limited resources. Now, playing devil's advocate for a moment, one can easily argue that every state in the country deals with food insecurities and food deserts, which I'll admit is true. However, what makes Arizona a unique case is that we are still higher than the national average. A state health assessment in 2014 reported that we exceed the national average, with around 29% of children and 19% of adult Arizonians live in a food insecure household. Now compare that to the national average of 20% of children and 16.1% of adults. Statistics from Feeding America, the largest domestic hunger relief organization in this country, broke down the statistics even further, stating that 1 in 8 people in Arizona struggle with hunger. 1 in 5 children in Arizona struggle with hunger, and that Arizona would need an extra almost $500 million to successfully feed our citizens every year. Mr. Chairman, members of this community, while this data already sounds intimidating and shocking already, let me begin to tell you about the health issues that arise from these food deserts. Diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular diseases. These are only a few of the health issues and disorders that can arise within these low-income food deserts. Obesity is one of the 2 major health issues that arise, and plenty of scholarly research, primarily from both Arizona State University and the University of Arizona, have highlighted that obesity is likely the result of considerable barriers to health food access, coupled with easy access to low-cost, unhealthy, fast, and convenience food. For many low-income families, fast food is the only close source of food near their communities, and because of this dependence for cheap fast food, many families, primarily Mexican and African American families, suffer from higher rates of obesity over the years, which in turn puts them in a dangerous situation to becoming a diabetic later in life. Even just living within these food deserts, children have a higher chance of becoming deficient in key vitamins and minerals, which has been shown to lead to many of these children having lower math scores, repeating grades, and even causing harm to the students' social behavior with their fellow classmates. Not only is academic and social success threatened by these food deserts, but also the outlook on dieting and dietary patterns becomes more shunned and looked down upon in these areas. When comparing students from food deserts and students from food secure areas, studies find that students in food deserts eat less breakfast, more fast food and dietary fat, and find that healthier foods are too inconvenient and unappetizing for them. But the scariest health issue involved in food insecurity and food deserts is that of diabetes. Currently, around 26 million Americans have diabetes, and the health costs to treat it has cost the United States almost $250 billion in health costs. While from a nationwide look, this already looks bad, but when comparing these stats to Arizona's, the seriousness becomes much worse. The 2019 Arizona Diabetes Action Plan and Report shows that out of 7.4 million citizens in our state, around 700,000 of them have diagnosed diabetes. That, statistically speaking, means that 1 in 10 Arizonians have diabetes. Not only that, but the report goes on and states that they estimate that around 1 in 3 Arizonians are likely to have pre-diabetes. This means that diabetes by itself has cost our state around $6.8 billion. And with the population continuing to increase, we could drastically see that $6.8 billion dramatically increase. And what makes these stats even worse is that the most vulnerable Arizonians, the ones who have the highest risk for diabetes, heart problems, blindness, and obesity, all come from these food deserts. The Arizona Department on Economic Security estimates that currently we have more than 700,000 citizens living in these regions. However, Mr. Chairman, fellow members of this esteemed committee, hope is not lost for our great state. My team, as well as scholars from all 3 major universities here in Arizona and scholars from across the country, have come up with viable solutions that can help eliminate, or at least bring assistance into, these at-risk communities. First, with interviews from small food retailers and farmers around the state, we have found that one of their biggest concerns with selling their products into these food deserts is that they financially suffer or barely make back any profit. What these individuals have recommended to us is that if our state were to offer economic or tax incentives, or even funding for better transportation equipment, it would make retailers and farmers more willing to transport and sell goods into these regions, offering their fresh produce to small retailers and businesses in the area. Second, the idea of opening farmers markets within these food deserts would allow these communities to shop for fresh produce while still following USDA regulations. Now, this has seen great success within the White Earth Indian Reservation in Minnesota, where diabetes has been declared a pandemic within the reservation. They have supported farmers markets in their communities, and every Thursday, citizens can go and buy fresh food and produce while also socializing with their fellow neighbors. Third option would be for the state to support food hubs. Now, what food hubs do is that they gather a variety of fresh products from local farmers around the state, package it, and then sell these packaged produce to the wider consumer population. And in doing this, not only would we be creating job opportunities and assisting local farmers, but these food hubs would be able to distribute this local fresh food to retailers and customers within food deserts. Our fourth option, while maybe a little controversial and unique, would be a state-funded mobile food market. These would primarily act as food trucks, but instead of actually serving cooked food, they would sell produce to communities within food deserts. They would have the capability to drive around urban and especially rural food deserts, selling fresh produce to the local population. Another twist on this concept would be, instead of a food market, a mobile food pantry or bank where citizens can use their SNAP or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, who would have an easier and more convenient way of using their food stamps to get fresh and locally sourced foods into these low-income communities. Option 5 would incentivize or at least ask corner stores, convenience stores, or other retailers to expand their stores to offer the ability to stock healthier food products. Because the Phoenix Mesa urban area has a lot of these types of stores and infrastructures already existing, it could be easier and more mainstream to ask these stores to expand and offer fresher food and produce to their customers. Finally, our final option takes a more local approach. The state should incentivize or offer local community gardens within food deserts so that members can grow and harvest their own food. Not only would this be a community project that would require neighbors to help each other, but it would be a unique approach to local produce, since the community would be the one to grow and eat their own produce rather than relying fully on outside retailers. Mr. Chairman, members of this advisory committee, I will be the first to admit that there is no simple solution to fix the food deserts and food insecurity that plagues our state. There is no magical solution to fix this overnight. Instead, this is a long-term goal that the state would need to invest and strive to accomplish over the next 5 to 10 years. But the greatest advice that I can give to this committee today is that we must begin to solve this problem immediately, before the financial burden of healthcare costs and health issues becomes too much for even our state to handle. The facts and statistics shown today are from academic scholars, health officials, and even reports from the state itself. Everyone agrees that the issue of food deserts and food insecurity are drastically affecting our state more than anywhere else. And I believe that the testimony that I have given today will be enough for this esteemed committee to agree with me. Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, the future of Arizona and its health is in your hands. Please, take your time reviewing my team's data and come to the most logical conclusion that you all see fit. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing more else to say.